Here's what I would certainly find. It just goes by too fast when you know that it should last way past the 4th of July.
All right, we're on. Welcome to WASA Distance Education. This is MEL3E, grade 11 math for work and everyday life. I'm Pete, and I'm your teacher. So thanks for joining us this morning. This is, we're going to talk about a different way of getting a vehicle. This works for cars or trucks. Yesterday, last class, we talked about buying a new vehicle. And then we talked, which, you buy the vehicle. Usually there's a substantial down payment, a few $1,000s you have to pay up front in order to get the loan. And then you can buy used vehicles as well. And then there's some advantages and disadvantages to that. Another alternative is leasing a vehicle. So basically you're renting it, and that's really what this is. There can still be a bit of a security deposit or a down payment, but it's not quite as much as if you're buying a new vehicle. So the reason why people lease vehicles is that cars and trucks, they are rather expensive, right? And so one of the things is that you get a lot of money, a lot of cash tied up in buying a new vehicle, even buying a used vehicle. Right? So we know that they depreciate. So if you don't plan to keep it for a long time, if you are maybe your circumstances are going to change within a few years, leasing might be a good alternative. That way you're not tying up quite so much cash, and you're not obligating yourself with a long loan. Typically a lease will be for a couple of years. Okay, so that's basically what leasing's all about. So let's take a look. I guess we're going to be on page 41. And so they say, they're going to give you the advantages to it right here on page 41. And so they say it is as simple as traditional financing. So, they're still going to, run their credit checks, and you sort of basically they're in effect loaning you not quite as much money, but they're also loaning you a car that you don't really own, or truck. So you have to agree to pay for it over the course of the contract, usually a few years, a couple of years, maybe 3 years. So you have to make sure you're going to be able to do that, because things kind of get ugly if you try and back out of it. There's all sorts of penalties and fees and stuff like that. Okay. So the big advantage of leasing is right here. Okay, so with leasing, you pay only the portion of the vehicle's worth that you anticipate using over the term of the lease. Okay, so it's a kind of a complicated way of saying, that depreciation on a new car, that's what you're paying for, right? So you're only really paying the depreciate. Plus, of course, they want to make money on doing this, so they're gonna charge a little premium for doing that. Okay. And then they're talking about 24 months or 36 months, so that's 2 or 3 years. So it's about your typical cell phone plan. So think about how often you change your cell phone. You could, if you leased vehicles, you could change your vehicle that often as well, and a lot of people do. They have a new vehicle every couple of years. It's it's a convenient way of doing things. Now, at the end of the lease, and this is the big difference between purchasing a new vehicle and leasing a vehicle. At the end of the lease, you don't own the vehicle. You have to return it, right? And so, and if you're not going to lease a new one, you have to get someone to come with you, because you're going to need a ride home. You're not going to have wheels after you return the vehicle. Okay. Now, another option that they give you is, you can lease a new vehicle. You can purchase the vehicle if you like it and you've had it for a few years. Maybe you like it. Maybe you decide that things, your circumstances have changed again, and you want to get that vehicle. It's working for you. It's exactly what you need. You've named it. Some people name their vehicles, and so you're attached to it. Now you want it, right? So you could actually buy it, and usually the way it works is up front they'll tell you in the paperwork that if at the end of the contract you have the option to buy it. Okay, and so you can do that. So you just have to go to the dealer and just give them a cashier's check or whatever it is. You may have to get a loan because there's going to be quite a bit owing on the vehicle because you only paid the 20 or 30% depreciation. You haven't actually paid for the whole thing. And then, of course, the other option here, return the vehicle and, well, literally walk away. Probably get someone to drive you back. So those are the options. Now, that last bit would be if your circumstances change so much that you don't need a vehicle, right? Or maybe your auntie gave you her old truck, right? Or something like that, right? Maybe you're going somewhere where you don't need a vehicle. So it's that would work too. Okay, and it's hard to imagine up north here, but in some of the bigger cities down south, Toronto, Ottawa, you could actually don't really need a truck at all. You don't need a car. You could actually take public transit, and it would be very, very cheap. We're actually going to talk about that a little later in the course, actually in Unit 4. So after the break, we're going to talk quite a bit about that, different modes of transportation. It sort of seems hard to imagine, but in a place like Ottawa, you go out to a bus stop, you wait maybe 5 minutes, which is less time than it takes to scrape your windshield, right? You wait 5 minutes, a bus comes along, you hop on it, and it takes you to wherever you want to go. So, having a vehicle is important here, but in some places it's really not, and it's actually very expensive. So, and that's really what this course is all about, just to kind of give you the tools to think about, how to save money, how to spend your money wisely, and just how to make sound decisions in your life with concerning your financing. So the leasing is one option, and here are some things, right? You're going to have a security deposit, which is refundable at the end of the lease. So they want $1,000 or $2,000 just to make sure that if you abscond, if you run away with their vehicle, if you stop paying, then it pays for them to go get it back, right? You may need a down payment on a vehicle, so that's like a couple of payments or something up front. And again, that's just, they want to make sure everything's right, so that if you get the vehicle and start paying, then everything's fine. But if for some reason somebody, not you, gets the vehicle and doesn't pay, then they have all these payments, and so for the time it takes them to go get it back, they're not going to be out too much. Now, here's one that really affects us in the north here. It's the excess kilometer or mileage usage fee. So when you get the vehicle, they're going to tell you that you're allowed to drive it a certain number of kilometers a year. Now, they're not preventing you from driving it more, but it's an agreed upon amount, 30,000, 20,000, 10,000 kilometers per year. And so if you have it for 2 years and it's 10,000, then if you bring it back and it has more than 10,000 or 20,000 kilometers on it, then you're going to pay a fee for the extra kilometers. And the reason for that is because the more you drive it, the more wear and tear on the vehicle is. So basically, you're agreeing to a certain amount of use, and if you use it more, then they're going to charge you a little bit extra. And it's a per kilometer thing. We'll see some examples there. It adds a few $100s. It could add a substantial amount if you're way over. So, and that's why I say it affects us in the north, because depending on where you rent your vehicle, or lease your vehicle, they may be sort of thinking about you driving around Toronto, driving around, some of the cities down in south, Windsor, London, and here, just to go shopping for, you drive 500 kilometers. So you got to really look at that number and make sure it matches what you expect to do. You could ask someone, how much mileage or kilometerage they put on their vehicles if you're trying to think of how much it would be. And then you also pay HST on your monthly payments because it's considered a service, so that's an extra 13%. So something to think about as you're running these numbers. So let's take a look at an example. This is on the bottom of page 40, and this is an example about Sherry. Okay, so girl Sherry is going to lease a new SUV. Okay, well she's on the right track because she needs an SUV. Now it's a $4,000 down payment. That's a lot of cash, isn't it? Um, but and then so maybe that's a little high, but anyway, $400 refundable security deposit. So if you bring it back and there's like cigarette burns in the seats, and the antenna's broken off and there's a couple of broken lights on it, they're going to keep that $400, right? That's what that's for. Okay. So, but you're not going to do that, right? So, and then 3 years of monthly payments. Okay. So she's going to pay for 3 years, $374.56 a month. And remember, there's HST on that. Okay. So you got to watch that one. Okay. And then what do they want to know? How much will she pay to use the SUV for the 3 years? So you're going to have your total cost of ownership of the SUV. So the way they've done this for the lease payment is they've taken 113%, 1.13 of the lease payments. So that's what she's going to pay. That's what's going to come out of her bank account. I guess that's a monthly thing every month. So that looks like a car payment a little bit, doesn't it? And then, so the cost of the lease is just going to be the total. It's their down payment plus the 36, and they've done this. This is not really the way I would do it. I'd actually do this calculation. Number of payments. Okay, so it's going to be it's 12 payments a year times 3 years equals 36. That's the way I would do it. So, and that's where you get your 36. So that's basically, they were trying to show you where they got the number 36, but that's really not good. Not good mathematical form. So, but here we go. This one's right. It's $4,000 plus 36 times the $423.26 a month. So there you go. So at the end of the 3 years, she's paid $19,273 for it. Okay. Now presumably she's going to get her security deposit back, and so then that's it. Now if she doesn't get the security deposit back, note this: if she doesn't get it back, then you have to add that to the total cost. Okay, because it is a total cost, and it doesn't really matter. If you lend your SUV to your auntie, and she brings it back and the seats are all torn up, you're not going to get your security deposit back. It doesn't matter why something happened to it, right? Okay, so that's it. Now, that looks like a lot of money, but when you consider that a typical SUV is probably about $40,000, and at the end of it, she's not obliged. Right after 3 years, she gives it back. That's it. Whereas if you were buying an SUV, you probably would then have to keep paying for probably 4 or 5 years. They'd be much higher payments, and you'd have to pay off all of the 40 or 1,000 or even more that it's worth. Plus, it would be depreciated quite a bit by the 3 years. So, it could be a good deal for her. The other way to do this, and you may wonder why people don't, why we're not talking about that. The other way to do it is to buy it new, use it for 3 years, and then sell it. And basically, in effect, this comes out to be the same, except that she has a guaranteed buyer. If you kind of look at it that way, it's not what she's doing. She's not selling it back to them. They own it, but it works out to be the same thing, right? You could buy it, use it for 3 years, and then sell it, or you lease it for 3 years and then just give it back, right? The only thing is that when Sherry knows that at the end of the 3 years she's going to come out, she knows exactly how much it's going to cost her. Whereas in 3 years, you don't know what you're going to get for the SUV, right? Maybe the economy is really good and you can get more for it than you would otherwise. Maybe the economy is really bad, nobody has any money, so then you get less for it, and that's the sort of thing that she's taking a little bit of the risk away by doing the lease. Okay. All right. And then, of course, some people just don't like to have to deal with that hassle, right, of selling something. So here you go. So they give you a bunch of examples here, and these pretty much follow the one that we did up above. It says calculate the cost of leasing each of the vehicles described below, assuming the security deposit is returned. So basically, what that means when you're doing these calculations is that you don't count the security deposit at all. Okay, it doesn't come into play unless we know that it wasn't returned. Then it's added to the total. Okay, so and that's in a way they're giving you information you don't need. Knowing the security deposit is returned, that's it. However, it is something to consider that not only do you have, in the case of A here, a $3,000 down payment, but another $350 security deposit. So that money is tied up for, the $350 is tied up for whatever the terms of the lease. In this case, it's 4 years. That seems like a little bit of a high length. The 4 and 5 year leases seem kind of high. I don't even know if you can get that. But because then it's starting to look more like a purchase. But anyway, so you have all that money tied up for a long time. So it's just something to think about as well when you're leasing a vehicle. Okay, I think we've seen that example. Those are done exactly like the example. Good old Sherry's SUV. Okay. Now, there is this kilometer usage surcharge. We use the term mileage, Mileage, mileage. I don't know if I'm spelling that right, but we use the term mileage as well. Just even though we don't, in Canada, we measure things distances in kilometers now, but you'll still hear people talk about mileage, and that's what they're talking about. Is the kilometers basically. Okay, so oops, I'm just checking to see how. Yeah, yeah. So there you go. Um, yeah. So I think I spelled that right. Mileage. So they're going to give you a maximum number of kilometers you can use. We talked about that, and then you just have to pay a little extra. Now, the only thing to be careful about here is that, of course, well, there's two things. You want to make sure you add it in to the end, the excess kilometers. Make sure you calculate the excess kilometers, it's not the total kilometers, just the amount you went over. And then be careful if they give you the surcharge in dollars is fine, but they will maybe sometimes give it to you in cents, like that, 20 cents. You have to be careful about that. You divide by 100 if they give it to you in cents to turn it into dollars. Otherwise, you're going to get a very big answer, which will be in cents, which is okay as long as you know to divide that by 100 to turn it back into dollars. Okay, so that's part 4 of the 4-step problem-solving model, where you look at your answer and it's like $10,000. It's like no, that wasn't $10,000. It's 10,000 cents, and it's just it's $100. So we divide by 100. Let's take a look at the example here. This is Kristen's 3-year lease, and it allowed her to drive 60,000 kilometers with a 20-cent per kilometer surcharge. Now, it doesn't say it, but that's what it is. Well, okay, on every kilometer over 6,000. Over the 3 years she drove that amount, what is their surcharge for exceeding the allowable kilometers? So this is what you do. You take the distance that she drove, you subtract this is the allowed, okay, and this is the difference right here. Okay, so the mistake I see students making is they don't do that calculation. They just take this number here, and calculate the whole thing, and then you get some enormous number. Okay, so that you calculate the difference between what she's allowed. Basically, you remove the free part, right? She gets a certain amount free, take that off. 60,000, boom, it's gone. So if she drove 8,000 kilometers more, which, what is that? That's about 8 trips to Thunder Bay, something like that. 8 extra trips. Not that, yeah, Winnipeg, maybe. So you're gonna multiply each kilometer, whoops, by the 20 cents per kilometer. Make sure it's in not cents, by, yeah, it's point 0.2 of a dollar, 20 cents. Make sure it's in dollar notation, 0.20, and then you get the extra surcharge. So there you go. So the extra 8,000, and that was a fairly substantial extra charge, wasn't it? Okay, 1,625.20 extra. But it might be worth it to her, and that's over 3 years, right? So maybe it was worth it to her. Okay, maybe that was the best she could get from the dealer at the time. Okay. All right. So we're gonna do some of these questions. Question 2 here, or sorry, example 2. Oh, support question 2. Yeah. Right. So and you can do these until you're sure you're getting them. If you feel you're getting them right, then you can just move on to support questions. That's the thing about math. Where you learn the most is from doing questions you don't know how to do. I know it's more fun to do questions you know how to do. And, we do a lot of those. But once you are, if you're studying, you're practicing math, try to do the questions that you find difficult. That's what makes you better, right? If it's easy, then you're probably not learning as much. So for 2B here, it's 48,829 kilometers that she used. She was allowed 40,000, so we just subtract that. And then the difference, which is also in kilometers, is going to be 8,829 kilometers. Okay. Is that the same? Is this the same question? It looks, it's close. And then times, whoops, sorry about that. Okay. So then we go, so it's 20 cents per kilometer, which is $0.20. Times, now this is the thing. It's 8,829 kilometers. And now we're going to get a number. It's actually 20 cents. It's per kilometer. That's really the way I'd write that out. And then the kilometers cancel out, and you end up with a dollar amount. So let's see. 0.20 times 8829. And so there you go. So it's $1,765.80. That's the excess. So knowing that this is possible, and knowing that that can happen, you really need to take that into consideration when you're getting a vehicle. Another thing to take into consideration when you're leasing a vehicle is this. Of course, you have to have insurance on your vehicle if you're leasing it. Will they let you drive it up to Winter Road? Okay. Sometimes these lease contracts will have a little fine print saying no off-road or no no, what would be, it's like actual roads only, no temporary roads, no ice roads. So you got to read that fine print, and if it says that, then you're taking a little bit of a chance when you take something off the road. So just something to check, just to know, and then you're making an informed. If you're taking a risk, then you're doing an informed risk. So here are some more practice questions, and now we actually get to do these. Now, when it says PST and GST, of course we're talking about HST, 13%. Just do that, okay? It's just a little, I guess it's left over from a time when we had these things separate. Okay. So calculate the cost of leasing each of the vehicles described below, assuming the security deposit was not returned. Okay, so what happens here is that it just adds to the total, right? So let's work on this. Okay, so this Part A, 36 monthly payments of 197.99. So, um, there's a couple ways we can go here. The payments. Let's work out the total of the payments. So they tell you that it's 36 times 197. They might say monthly for 3 years, yeah, times 197. Don't know why. Okay. Now, let's see if I can do this without erasing a big block of it. So it's 197.99. Okay, so we're going to work that out. That's the total of the payments over the 3 years. So it's 197.99 times 36. Okay, so it's a 7,127.64. Now it's payments plus HST. Okay, so I just used the word P for payments because it should be obvious at that point. You could write out payments if you want, or just abbreviate it like I did. So it's just going to be, it's a 113%, so 1.13 times the 7,127.64. So that, and I still have it on my calculator, so it's just going to do 1.13 times that. Okay, so those are the total payments. Big numbers, eh? So, and then I'm going to round that to 23. But, still you're only paying for the part that you're using, not the whole thing. Okay. So, and then, presumably the dealer, after you've leased the vehicle for 2 or 3 years, they will put it on their used car lot and then they'll sell it as a used car. They've made some money off of renting it to you, leasing it to you, and then they're going to make some more money off of selling it to someone. So, it works out. It's sort of one of those good beneficial things. All right, so what else do we have here? I'm really going to end up squeezing this in here, but basically, and then we have to do the excess kilometers. Okay, I think I'm going to have to make myself a little room down at the bottom here. Okay. All right, so sorry about all that. Okay, so what did what did we have here? So we had the payment was 8,054.23. And now we got to look at the excess kilometers. So this is excess km. So what did they allow us? They allowed us 60,000. We actually used 32, 492. No, 72. So it's 72, 492 kilometers. All right, minus the 60,000 that they told us we could use without any extra, right? They're not saying you can't use more. It's just you got to pay for the extra. So and that should be. Can we do that in our heads? That's 1,2,4,9,2 kilometers, right? So 72,492 minus 60,000. I think that's 12,000. Okay. So now the next thing then is to find out how much each one is. So it's 10 cents per kilometer. So it's going to be a charge. You could say charge. Doesn't look right. Okay, so the charge, it's 10 cents times the difference, which is, okay, it's 12,492 kilometers, and it's 10 cents per kilometer. I keep forgetting to put that one in there. So times 0.1, and there you go. So it's $1,249.20. Okay, we're getting there now. What's the next thing? Now they said that the security deposit wasn't refunded. So here's the total cost then. So the total cost is going to be the $425 security deposit plus the total cost of leasing with tax, which was $8,054.23. 8,054. Whoa. All right, let's try that again. Okay, it's going going to double check that. 23. Yep, 23. Plus the excess kilometer surcharge. Okay. All right, I'm going to just extend this page just a little bit, giving us a little more room. And so that is going to be equals, I guess we'll put it there. We'll just add all those up. So plus 423 plus 425 equals. So there you go. There's the total cost of ownership, leasing, 43. Okay, so and an extra $425 because maybe you let the dog stand on the seat and it put some holes in it, or you let someone in and they scratch the seats or something. Now we could, if we wanted to see, we could actually look at the because this is a support question, we can actually look at the back and see. One of the things I'm interested in, if the difference is a little bit, it could be because the PST and GST were calculated differently. But let's just have a look here. This is going to be lesson 15. So it's just at the bottom. I'm just going to look at the what they say the total is. So this is support question 3. Okay. So what do we get here? A. Okay. 298. Okay. 249 kilometers. 23. 3A. 45. 425. Okay, I'm looking at this. Let's see here. Let's back up. So, let's see. What did we end up with? 8,000. So it's $4,500 down payment. Okay, 45. Oh, okay. So they're okay. So somebody's do watch that because somebody has changed the numbers for the payments. And if you look in our question, it's $197.99, but in the back of the book they were using 223. So that's quite a bit of difference in the payments. So all right, yeah, that's something to watch out for. And so basically, when we change the question, we probably need to be changing the answer at the back as well. But hopefully you can look at that and you can see that they did it the same way we did it, so it's probably correct anyway. Okay. All right. So that's an example of how to do it when you have they're going to keep the security deposit. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. I guess we're ready to look at the key questions for this unit here. And we're just gonna take a look at that. And they're identical to the questions that we were just answering. So let's see what if we can find something kind of interesting in the key questions here. Just a second here. Grab this. It's gonna make a bit of noise. Okay. So yeah, so one of the things I'm sure that they're going to ask is, at some point you're going to be asked is what is, whether renting or leasing, leasing or buying is a good idea. So here you go. So key question 1, they're basically just asking you to calculate the cost of leasing each vehicle. And then, so make sure that you make a note here, assuming that the security deposit will be returned. So that's where basically this security deposit doesn't count. Okay? And so you just don't include that. So they've actually quite helpfully put HST on each of them. That's great. Okay, so we know how to do that. We've done a couple of examples that way. Calculate the kilometer surcharge on each below. So you can do those, and you know how to do it. And let's check. Okay, so it's all given in dollars, so that should be good. Okay, and then for step 3, it's the same as part 1, but it's assuming the security deposit was not returned. So do watch that. That means that you do have to add the security deposit into the total cost. Okay, and don't, this should say HST. I don't really know what's, it sort of looks like we were editing this and it just didn't quite all get done. So that's fine. It should be exactly like question 1. It should say this for those that part. So sorry about that one. I'm making a big long list of all these little things, and I'll get that taken care of. So here's a word question, and this is where we really have to apply that 4-step problem-solving model. Okay. So let's take a look at what they're asking us. And I think yeah. Okay. So question 4, it says Richard decided to purchase his vehicle after the lease ran out. Okay. So this is one of those things where at the end you can actually buy the vehicle, and then they gave him probably in advance. They say that that's how much it would cost to purchase it. Okay. So his payments were that much. Okay. And not including HST, so you gotta sort of watch that. He originally gave you a down payment of that amount of money. What is the total purchase price of the vehicle if you include the cost of leasing? Include a complete sentence in your solution. So this is a word problem. So at the end, it's going to say something like his total cost of Richard's vehicle was whatever. It's worth 4 marks. So how are you going to approach this, right? Well, if you look at this, what does the $11,700 add to this, the cost of it? Okay, we're not gonna now. The problem is that they don't tell us whether that includes HST or not. That 11,700. But the fact that they said that the monthly payments didn't include it makes me sort of lean towards the fact that that includes HST. It basically includes everything. Okay, so we have to make that assumption because it does. If it didn't include HST, they'd say not including HST, right? If it didn't include some other fees, then it would probably say not including these other fees. So we're just going to assume that the 11,700 just adds to the total cost of his vehicle. Okay, so in that case, then you work it out exactly like you did in part 1 questions from this key question. So just the ones where they return a security deposit. In this case, there is no security deposit, or it's not mentioned, so presumably, it was returned or there wasn't any. So you just work out his total lease payments, right? Got to find out the HST on them, add the down payment, and then just add in the total purchase price of the vehicle, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so include a complete sentence in your solution. So that will be one of the marks for that part right there. So that's the type of word question that you're going to get. Just go through it like I did and kind of highlight stuff. Try and think about your assumptions. If you have to make an assumption and you're not sure about it, you could actually write down, your assumptions at the front of the question. That's a perfectly fine way of doing things, right? So yeah, perfectly fine way of answering a question if you have to make an assumption. Okay. All right. And now, so here's an example of some stuff, type of question that's a little different from what they did in the example questions. So here it is. What is the term in years for both purchasing and leasing the 2005 Mustang? So the term, what they're talking about is the term right here, but they're giving it in months, right? 48 months. So you divide 48 by 12, and you should get 4, right? Okay, that was a rhetorical question. So it's 4 years. Okay. So that's something, most of these leases are specified in months: 60 months, 5 years; 48 months, 4 years; 36 months, 24. Probably don't get too many leases for just 1 year. Okay. So they're basically asking you to compare, a buy and a lease proposition here for a particular car. It's a 2005 Ford Mustang two-door coupe V6. Well, it's a little old. I assume that they were talking about a new car at the time. Somebody wrote this. Not such a bad car, but probably not something you'd want to take up the winter road. I don't know. I wonder if it would make it. So it says here, why does the NA appear under the by column when referring to the kilometers per term? Well, there you go. See, kilometers per term. Look at that. You're allowed 100,000 if you lease it. Not applicable. N/A stands for not applicable. So when you buy a vehicle, nobody's there, with a clipboard saying, "Oh, you exceeded your allowable kilometers," right? Because you own it. So you can drive it as much as you want, right? At 200,000 kilometers, that's fine, right? Probably be good if you'd bring it in and change the oil, or change the oil yourself every few thousand kilometers the way you're supposed to. But other than that, it doesn't really have any effect on, it's not going to cost you any extra when you return it, because you're not returning it. It may cost you extra when you go to sell it, right? Because you can imagine that if somebody's thinking about buying your 2005 Mustang and it has 100,000 kilometers on it, or it has 200,000 kilometers on it, you can probably imagine you get a little different amount of money, depending on how many kilometers are on it. Okay, but that's so the N/A it doesn't apply when you buy it. So you can put that in your own words, and it's worth a mark. So that's a word question. So use some words here. Use some words. Okay. And then you're going to calculate the difference in the monthly payments. So now, you could do this in a couple of ways. You could try it for a percentage, but really it's just a dollar amount would be perfectly fine, right? And then it says calculate the total leasing cost for the car for 4 years, and remember to include HST in the monthly payment. Okay. And here you go. Which would you choose? Buy or lease? Explain your choice. Okay. Now this is kind of, um, you can make a case either way. Okay. So, what we're looking for is your engagement in the material, like to make some points based on your analysis of the charts, your answers to these questions, parts A to D, right? So, and, possibly your own circumstances. Okay, so that's what we're looking for when we're doing something like this, when we're asking for a question like this. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer per se. There's a right or way, there's a right and wrong approach to it, but there's no right or wrong answer, and it's how you frame your answer, right? The payments for this amount. There's, you could talk about, for example, the down payment, right? Well, I guess it's the same for both of them. Okay, so the costs, the convenience, whatever. You can sort of engage in that material a little bit. Okay, so I think we pretty well run through the leasing vehicles. And so we've actually now looked at 3 different ways to get vehicles. We've looked at buying new, buying used, and then leasing. Okay, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. Okay, and then in the next unit we'll actually look at ways to get around that, where it doesn't involve you owning a vehicle. Okay, because there's actually a lot of costs involved in owning a vehicle, right? There's insurance, there's registration, got to get it the emission tested every once in a while if you own it down south anyway. You got to get your winter tires put on, right? You have to buy new tires every once in a while, and the maintenance and stuff. So there's quite a bit of cost and some hassle in owning a vehicle. For a lot of us, it's worth it, but depending on your circumstances, it may not actually be worthwhile. Okay. So now because this was a relatively short lesson, really I should be going on to lesson 16, but that's in unit 4. So make sure that you get your unit 4, if at all possible, uh, from the DEC today. A lot of them are closed after today anyway, so try and get it. I'll try and make the rest of the week's lessons. I'll keep in mind that you may not have it. The other way to get a copy of the handout is just to email me, and I can at least send you an electronic copy that you can look at, and you'll be able to read it anyway while you're listening to the lesson. Okay. So what I can do now, just because we have about 8 or 9 minutes left, so I'm just going to go back through Unit 3 and maybe look at some of the key questions and make sure that we're kind of comfortable doing all these key questions. Okay. So let's see, where are we? So Unit 1, sorry, for Lesson 11, then we were doing credit card applications, and I think I probably went through these. And so they're just asking a lot of questions about taking a credit card application. Why do you have to supply certain information, right? So we're looking for words for all of these questions. So try to use your words. And again, if you're stuck on one of these, you can certainly always ask me, right? I'd rather you just call me up or send an email and say, hey, can you explain this one to me a bit more? Because I'd rather you do that than just leave it blank, right? Because we really want you to kind of think about this material, and if you can come up with an answer to a question, it means you thought about it. Okay. So that's where so that first key question for this unit, so key question 11, has a lot of word type questions. Okay. And we talked about housing, why they're so interested to know what kind of your housing situation, and really, and we're going to, I think we do a little bit of, well, no, not, this whole course is really about money and making financial decisions. And you have to understand, for a lot of people, housing is the most expensive thing. It's their most expensive monthly expense, right? Now, if you're living somewhere, if you're not paying rent, or if you're not paying a mortgage, if you're living with someone, or housing, somehow have housing, then your vehicle is probably going to be the next thing, right? But for a lot of people, it is housing. Especially in the high rent places, which seems to be pretty much everywhere. In the north, it's high rent because of scarcity, and then in places like Toronto, it's high rent because everyone wants to live there. So I guess everyone's going to pay a lot of money for either rent or a house. Okay, so because your housing costs include the cost of either your rent or your mortgage, plus your utilities, your insurance, your taxes if you own. So there are a lot of expenses to that. Okay, so that's why the credit card companies want to know what that is, and that's why when you're moving somewhere and when you're changing your circumstances, that's the thing that you need to be zeroing in on, right? To make sure that you get the cheapest place you can that's suitable, right? You don't want to live in a dump, you don't want to live in a bad part of town. You don't want to live way far away from your work or your school, or where you need to be. We're not saying that, but it's something that you really don't get that many chances to affect your the cost of your housing, right? So, using my example, I've been in Silicout for going on 5 years now, and only twice have I had a chance to change the cost of my housing, right? Once when I moved here, and then once a few years later when I moved, right? So you don't really get a chance to change that number very often. So if you can even save $25 a month or $50 a month, making a choice between one place and another, everything else being equal, you pick the cheaper place, and then it saves you hundreds of dollars a year for as long as you're there. Okay, so that's why it's emphasized in the credit applications, and that's why I emphasize it as well when you're making decisions, right? Now the credit cards, I kind of went through this fairly quickly with the credit cards because Um, yeah, I think I went through this fairly quickly. They're going to ask you why the annual fee varies from card to card. Right here, this is the second part of this. And what it really comes down to, for example, this one, this WestJet one on page, where are we anyway? Page 9, it has a $70 annual fee. And then this one, let's see, well, it says no annual fee for the Costco Platinum. Okay. And that depends on what they give you. Now, they don't always tell you everything on the card, but here you're earning 1 air mile for every $15 in card purchases. So if having air miles is important to you, that might be worth it, right? So every time you fill up your truck, if you, if you, every time you buy groceries, if you use the card, then you're going to get all these air miles, and then you can travel. And if you travel a lot, then it could be a benefit to you, right? Whereas this one, the Costco card, it gives you a low interest rate on balance transfers. So if you have a high interest credit card and you transfer a balance into that, then it's going to at least for 6 months, going to give you a very low interest rate. So that might be a way to kind of get a little bit ahead of a high interest card. And then what else do they get? I'm not really sure what else you get. Oh, an annual cash rebate of up to two, and it's hard to read, 0.25%. So that's kind of a cool thing. So you use it for all your expenses, and then at the end of the year, you're going to get a check, or maybe they just apply it to your card, your balance. Okay, so it really depends. Now, like the card I have has a rewards type thing, and so I spend when I spend money on my credit card, then I get some sort of bonus rewards, and then I can either buy merchandise through their little catalog. But one of the things that they give you is gift cards for big retailers such as Future Shop. Okay, so that works well for me because I buy a lot of stuff from Future Shop. So it's valuable to me, right? My card gives me, I think it's some sort of insurance, travel insurance. If I buy my tickets through them, it gives me product protection insurance. So if I buy a microwave oven and it breaks down, then they will repair it even if it's outside the warranty for a period of time. So it's a good deal. But that's the thing, right? You have to pick your card and look through all of the stuff they give you with it, and then decide whether it's worth the fee. Okay, you have to understand what the fees are, right? And for example, the WestJet card, $70 annual fee, and then additional cards are free. That's actually a good deal because, like, I know I'm paying about $30 extra a year to have a second card, okay, over top of the fee that I pay for it. So um, that's basically what we want you to think about when you're getting a credit card, right? All of the benefits to it, and then all of the fees. Okay, and then we worked on in that unit on how to calculate interest rates and things like that, right? Now, one of the things that they showed in that unit was relatively low balances. Where credit cards get really scary is when you get really big balances with very, very big minimum payments. And then it can be very hard to get out from under that. Okay, so that's why I'm not really down on credit cards. I'm just down on credit cards where we run a balance every month. That's not really the best way to use them. It's an expensive way. So then we talked about loans, which are very similar to credit cards, it's just that the interest rates tend to be much lower, and you go into the bank and you kind of negotiate it. Um, so there you go. And depending on um, the state of the economy, loans can be easy to get. They can be more difficult to get, right? Um, so there you go. And then we talked about amortization tables and how to read them. And so we're looking for the scheduled payments there. That's how you work out how much it costs, the total amount of the loan, just the number of payments times the regular payment. Okay. All right. So there you go. And so on. I guess, yeah. All right, so I guess we'll leave it right there. When you come back tomorrow, do try to have Unit 4 with you for the last couple of classes, and we'll just get a little bit ahead um, uh, in this last couple of classes before the the break. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Merry Christmas. Yeah, and happy holiday. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holiday.
Christmas is coming just around the bend. I wish those jingle bells would never end. I know that it's true. I wanna spend this Christmas with you.